Hi, and welcome to Unit 3, Chapter 10. But before we get started on that, I just want to make some comments on Unit 2 as a whole. It's one of the hardest units to concept or grasp the concepts that go on. And so if you feel kind of down after going through Unit 2, no worries. There is an upside. Chapter 10, 12, and 13 can kind of be seen as a little bit easier, and so hopefully Unit 3 won't be as hard to some of you, but there were 3 A's, I believe 4 B's, and 7 C's, and just a couple D's, and so overall the tests weren't that bad. The biggest thing is just to stay on top of the homework, so that's what we're going to help you out with on today's lesson in Chapter 10. It is simple interest, and the terms that you'll be expected to know from the book are what is principal, what is a maturity value, as well as simple interest, because that's what this chapter is about. One thing that we'll be really working with is a simple interest formula. And previously we talked about formulas, but this one is simple interest is equal to the principal times the rate times the time. Now the book discusses the 2 different methods that calculate time. There's the actual exact method, where you take the number of days divided by 365, and then there's the ordinary interest method, which is where you take the exact number of days divided by 360. And to show the minute, or actually it could be very large difference depending on the values that you're working with, we're going to work through some of the practice problems as well as some of the homework. And we're going to do that by finding the unknown. And we have our portion-based rate, a little circle here, but this time we have it interest, principal times rate times time. And so I'm looking at page 262, and we're actually looking at the practice quiz, and we're going to work through, because this is what your homework looks like. So the first question is asking for what is the principal if we know the interest rate is 5%, we know the time is 90 days, and our simple interest is going to be 8,000. So to calculate that, I'm going to cover up what I want to find out, and I want to find out my principal. So I'm going to have interest divided by rate times time. So what I'd have is 8,000 divided by my interest rate, which is 0.05, times, now is it just 90? No. The problem says assume 360 days. So we're always going to have to compare this to a full year. So we're going to look at 360. So when I put that into the calculator, we have 90 divided by 365 times 0.05 gets to be 0.0125. So then we basically take 8,000 divided by 0.0125, which gives us $640,000. So the principal, you have to have $640,000 to have $8,000 in interest. So our principal would just be 640,000. So for this next problem, we need to find the interest rate. So we cover up the interest rate, and we know we get paid $350 divided by our principal times our time. So our principal of 7,000 times 220 over 360, which can reduce, and it's 0.61111. And so we times it by 7,000, we get basically 350 divided by 4,277.7 with the remainder, and so the interest rate is going to be, and it comes up with 0.0818. So you're getting an interest rate of about 8.2%. So what that interest rate is. The last one we're going to solve for is time. So if we cover up our time, then we have our interest amount of 300 divided by 1,000 times our rate of 8%. So we have 1,000 times 0.08 is 80. So 300 divided by 80, zeros drop. 30 divided by 8 equals 3.75. Now, was that in time or months? I have to look and check with the book to see what we were actually solving for. And that is actually going to be needed to be multiplied by the number of days in a year. So times 360 gets either 1,350 days. So to have $300 of interest accumulate with 8% interest and only having $1,000, you're going to need 1,350 days to get that interest. Another thing people talk about is the U.S. rule, and it's paying off debt sooner than what the actual payment plan is, so you can actually save money. And one of the things that the U.S. allows is they say, hey, this is a good thing, people need to get out of debt, they should do this, they should get credited, and they should get charged only for the days that they had that certain amount. And so the U.S. rule, we're going to look at number, it's a practice problem 3A on page 264, so I'm going to turn there. And it says, Polly Finn borrowed $4,000 for 60 days at 4% interest. On day 15, Polly made a $700 partial payment. On day 40, she made a $2,000 partial payment. What is Polly's ending balance due under the U.S. rule, assuming a 360-day year? So I've got our time. So we got 60 days. I've got a rate of 4% interest, and I've got how much we borrowed. So we have to calculate our interest for the first payment period. So it said she paid on day 15. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our 4,000, which is our principal, times our rate, times our time, which is 15 over 360. So 15 over 360 times 0.04 times 4,000 gets us. So there's already, in 15 days, there's $6.66 of interest accumulated. Now she said they paid a $700 payment. So you have to subtract that to get what actually goes against the principal, which would be $693.33. So of that $700, 693 of it and 33 cents went against what was borrowed. So I'm going to subtract that from the 4,000. And we have $3,306.67. Well, now it said that she made a second payment of $2,000 on day 40. So 25 days later, so 3,360.67 has had 25 days to accumulate interest. So I'm going to times that by 0.04 for our interest rate, and then times that by our 25 days, divided by our 360, and that gets me $9.18, actually 19 cents if you round, of interest. So this is how much interest has accumulated in the next 25 days. Well, we have to take that away from our payment of $2,000, which shows us to be 1990.82. So now we subtract that payment of $1,990.82 from our remaining balance previously, and that should give us our outstanding balance left of $13,15.86. Now, are we done there? No, because we're not to our 60 days yet. She still has, if we're on day 40, she still has 20 days left that we have to figure out how much interest can accrue in those last 20 days. So 13, 15, 86 times 0.04 times 20 over 360 equals times it's $2.92 that we have to add back to the remaining, because that's our interest, so we have to add that, $2.92, gives us a grand total of $1,318.78. So that's how much she has remaining. So that's how you do a U.S. rule problem. Now let's look at some of the homework. We've got 4 minutes left on the video, so we can keep on working. So let's look at actually your homework, which is due this coming Sunday. And we're going to do number 4, 12, 20, and 18. So it says the principal is $1,000, interest rate is 8%, the date borrowed was March 8th, and the date repaid was June 9th. Figure out the exact time, the interest rate, or the interest amount, and then the maturity value. Well, I'm going to look up in my chart, March 8th is 67, and June 9th was when it was repaid, is 160. So I'm going to subtract that to get my exact time. Gives me 93 days. So my interest amount is going to be my principal times my rate times my exact time over 360. So 1,000 times 0.08 times 93 over 360. Now, did it say exact or did it say original or ordinary? Let's check. And I believe it says use ordinary interest. So 93 divided by 360 times 0.08 times 1,000 equals $20.66 with a remainder, so 67. So our new maturity value is going to be $1,020.67 because we just add the interest on to the principal. Number 12 is asking us to figure out the rate. Gives us the principal, the time, and the simple interest. So we look, we want our rate, so it's interest divided by principal times time, which is this calculation here. So 300 divided by 5,000 times our time. Now I give it in months, and we have to take it to years. So 6 over 12 is also 1/2. So you have 300 divided by 2,500. So 3 divided by 25 equals 12%. So our interest rate is going to be 12%. Number 20, we have an interest rate of 12%, which is the initial amount of $125. Figure out the rate, and our time is a month, or April is 30. So we have our 125 divided by 12 times 1 month out of 12 to get our rate. And the best way to calculate that, number 20, is, there we go, I forgot my decimal point, 0.12 times 1/12. So 125 divided by 0.01 equals 12,500. And then the last one, number 28, we want to know how long it's going to take to increase our value by $700. So I'm going to do 700 divided by the principal of 1,000 times 0.12 So 700 divided by 120 is equal to 5.8 years. If you have any questions, let me know by email. Thanks. Bye.